As a photographer, tell me if you've been in this position before, because I'm convinced everyone has. You're out with a group of people, or maybe you're out with your significant other, and there's always the one person who's really good at spotting what it is you're looking for. But then they have the unenviable position of trying to describe to the rest of the group where to look. It's in the main tree, and then go up 4 branches, and then it's over to the right. And some people will find it right away. They'll say, oh, there it is. And every group has the one blind person in it. They can't see it. And in my friend group, it's me. I'm the one who's blind. And people get really frustrated with me. They're like, what are you, blind? And I'm like, yes, I am. But what if I wasn't? A little trend that I've seen going around wildlife YouTube of people using a thermal monocular to try to help them see a little bit better. So in this video, I'm going to test my new little toy here, my new eye in the sky, and see if this can actually help me see things better, and that you won't have to point it out to me at least 50 times. For my first test, I went to a place where I knew there were owls. And I like this place because one of the owls will usually sit on the nest back in a dark owl box. So I thought it would be a great first test to see if we can get some cool thermal images. The good news was the owl was actually in the nest box, but the bad news was, as you can see, it wasn't really the dark scene that I was hoping for. Still, I took some shots with the thermal to see what it looked like. All of these thermal monoculars have different modes that you can switch through. You can see here the different modes that mine has. There's white hot, black hot, red hot, and fusion. And you can see here in this graphic how that affects the image that you see in the monocular. In this particular instance, I thought that fusion was the one that made the owl stand out. Granted, this was in daylight, so it's kind of hard to say, but this is the result I got with fusion. I then moved on to another owl nesting location that I knew of, and I like this location because, as you can see here in the video, the owl sits deep down in this nest. It's at the top of this broken tree and is mostly concealed. So the test here is to see how well the thermal can pick up just the little small parts of the owl that's actually visible. At this second sight, I thought the thermal did pretty good. The stills I took here were in the white hot mode, but then I rolled some video, and as you can see in the video, I cycled through all of the different modes, and I thought each one picked up the owl pretty well. I have to say, overall, I was pretty impressed. We had done a good job testing to make sure the thermal could see owls during the day, but now I was about to put it to its ultimate test to see whether it could see owls in the pitch dark. Good morning. It is 3:18 a.m. My alarm has just gone off because these are the things that I would do to try to go see an owl. So let's get to it. All right, well, good morning. So yeah, it is before 4 a.m. and I am on the road, and I am heading out to meet a small group of DFO members for Denver Field Ornithologists. And this morning we're going on a little owling mission. We are going to try to go see or hear, most likely hear, the Northern Saw-Whet Owl, which is an owl I definitely have never seen before. I may have heard one time, but I wasn't sure, so I definitely don't count it. So if we could hear or see this morning, that'd be a lifer for me, for an owl that's very hard to find. So that's the hope, and that's why I am up before 4 a.m. on a Sunday. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited to get over there, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Once I got to the location, the group split up into two different vehicles and we went to the first spot. Our group leader, David, started making calls, and right away, the owls started responding. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it, and I had also brought along not only the thermal, but I brought along my field recorder to try to listen in. I would use my field recorder to locate the audio direction, and then I would scope with the thermal to see if one of the owls was actually in the tree close to us. The first location, I saw an owl through the thermal fly in and land in a box elder tree. David would then shine the flashlight on the tree to maybe hope that we could get a glimpse. And this is what you're seeing the first footage from, is me with my camera trying to see if I could see the owl, but the thermal located the very first owl. After observing this first owl, we moved on to the second location where David again made a call, and then the owls responded back almost immediately. Again, it was so incredible to hear. And then I started scoping in some of the trees with the thermal, and sure enough, I would see the heat signature of one of the owls in the trees. So David would shine the light over, and then we would try to get a look. And then at one point, one of the owls flew across the field in front of us, and David shined the spotlight, and we saw the owl fly right across our field of view, and then it went and landed in some other trees. So then we repeated the process where I would scope in, I would find where the owl is, and we would shine the flashlight, and everyone ended up getting views of a total we saw that night 4 Northern Saw-Whet Owls. And I would say the thermal scope was a large bit of why we were able to see the owls. All right, well, that is the video featuring my new little thermal scope. I hope that you liked it and found it interesting. And yeah, seeing those Northern Saw-Whet Owls there at the end of the video, it probably didn't come across as exciting as it was actually in person, because a lot of the footage is just sort of at dark and it's just kind of out of focus in the trees. So I didn't know how to present that in the video, but it was an incredible experience, and the thermal here was a very key part of us locating those owls and seeing where they were and knowing where to put the flashlight in the tree, so that we had a chance to all, even though I didn't capture any of the footage on my camera, I was able to physically see them at least 3 or 4 times, and it was really incredible. So the first time we heard the calls, and, it's pitch dark, so you hear the calls and they sound close, and you can see that there's some trees around us, but you just have no idea where they actually are. And so I scoped in that first tree, and seeing that little white dot come flying in and then land, I was like, I see the tree, I see the owl, it's in the tree. And David, our group leader, was like, what do you mean? How can you see? And I was like, I've got a thermal. Oh, he didn't know that I brought a thermal scope until I told him. I was like, oh yeah, I've got thermal. And he's like, you have what? And I was like, yeah, I can see. And so, the whole rest of the night, I kind of was just scoping trees, and then when I would find him, he would shine the light over there, and we would try to get a look. And, he would shine the light like maybe 5-10 seconds, because again, we don't want to disturb the owls too bad. And, but yeah, it was a really cool outing, and the thermal, that is where it shined for sure. So speaking of which, let's go into sort of the pros and cons. The pros are, it's a perfect thing to bring along if you're doing some night or dark wildlife spotting in the dark. It's not night vision, keep in mind. It's not like, it's a different thing between night vision and thermal. So the thermal is just picking up on heat signatures. So the thing that it can't do is it cannot see through things. So let's say if a bird was in a tree that had tons of leaves on it, it can't see through the leaves to see that there would be a bird back there. So fortunately, we're in the winter, so there are no leaves. But that is definitely a situation where it was just really clutch to be able to see that kind of stuff at night. I think if you're doing any sort of photography or wildlife spotting towards dusk or early morning, it would be great. I'm also picturing maybe like, you know, every once in a while we get those badgers reported out at like the arsenal. And so people go out there early morning. And I think bringing that to be able to scope out across all of those prairie dog burrows, seeing where badgers could be, is another situation. I think that would be pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, it did great. It struggles sometimes during the day because, again, you're competing with the sun, and the sun is hitting like branches in the trees. So when you're scoping it, of course, it's putting off heat signatures. So during the day, you end up getting some false positives. But I think you saw at that second great horned owl's nest, the one that was in the really concealed down in the top of that tree, all of the heat signatures were pinging pretty well, I thought. So again, if you were looking at that tree and someone was like, hey, there's an owl up there, and you scoped in, I think it stood out pretty well on the scope to be like, oh yeah, there it is. So again, that's another sort of situation that I think of, because again, I get things pointed out to me and I'm just like, wait, where is it? And people must want to kill me. And you know, and the funny thing is like I've got actually really good vision. And like a lot of times I'm the one who notices something, but when someone else notices it and then is trying to describe it to me, for some reason I just can't I can't find it. But anyway, so that's the pros. Negatives, I'm sure, as you saw in the video footage it takes, it's very shaky. And again, when you're hand holding, there's no image stabilization at all in this thing. I think the video footage made it look like I was sitting there like literally holding the thing like this. Like, why is it so shaky? And no, it was just seriously just straight up, and I'm just scanning. It just picks up any little movement because there's no image stabilization in these things. And that's a cost thing. You know, there's a reason why this one is, quote, on the cheaper end. You know, it's to have image stabilization in something like that costs money, and that would take that out of that budget range. So that was definitely one of the negatives. And again, I'm not necessarily reviewing this specific model. I'm kind of just making a generalization review about thermal scopes in general. But yeah, this one, no image stabilization, so a lot of the video footage is really shaky. The button on here to take a still, you have to really push it down. And so when you're taking the still, it always makes the camera like, you know, have that blur in the image. So the buttons on here are kind of hard to press. So again, when you're trying to get stills, it's kind of a pain. Yeah, and I would just say it's definitely a luxury item. It's something you definitely don't need. But like I said, I was happy to take it out for a situation where it really, really helped, which was seeing those Northern Saw-Whet Owls. So, you know, does a wildlife photographer need one of these? No, of course not. Is it a cool thing to have, and can it come in handy in certain low light situations? Absolutely can. So, but these things can get really expensive. Like I said, mine, I would not consider this cheap, but compared to the other really fancy ones, this thing is really cheap. So, I really like it. I'm glad I bought it. I have no regrets. I know going out in low light, I will always bring it with me, because just to have that little bit of extra help, I think it's worth it. So anyways, that is my take on thermals. I think it's pretty cool. I could see this technology definitely just getting better and better over time. And yeah, I think it's kind of cool though. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will be back for another one soon. And until then, thank you so much for watching. See you later. Bye.